Hi, I'm Amy from Peekaboo Pattern Shop. Today I'm going to show you how to sew a lined sleeveless dress using the burrito roll method to finish the arm openings. It gives you a really nice, pretty, clean finish, and you don't have to use any bands or binding on your dress bodice. I have my outer bodice pieces sewn together at the shoulder seams, and I have the flutter sleeves attached. So now I'm ready to sew the bodice to the bodice lining around the neckline. If you're including the flutter sleeves, you're going to want to just flip them over so they're out of the way during this step. So with right sides together, you're going to lay the bodice lining on top of the bodice. Now if you're doing the scoop back, it's going to look pretty close to the front neckline, so you want to make sure you've got the fronts together and the backs together, that you don't have those two mixed up. So you can lay those together and then make sure your shoulder seams are aligned and then sew together around the neckline. I just sewed around my neckline with my serger. If you used a sewing machine, you can go ahead and clip your seam allowance along the neckline, and that'll help it lay smoothly. You'll notice this does not really look like it's laying flat, but once you hold it up like this, which is how it's going to lay once it's on the body, then everything should lay smoothly. If it doesn't, you might have accidentally stretched out your neckline a little bit. You can try pressing it back into shape with an iron. So now what we're going to do is turn the lining to the inside of the bodice. And then once you do that, you'll want to give it a good press. And after you've pressed it, you have two options to finish your neckline. You can either top stitch along the neckline, sewing through both the bodice and the bodice lining at the same time, or you can understitch it. If you'd like to understitch it, you're going to be sewing the seam allowance to the lining. You won't be sewing through the outer fabric. So when you put it in your sewing machine, you'll be sewing along just right along here, sewing the seam allowance right to the lining. And that's what I'm going to do for this dress. I finished understitching my neckline, so now we're ready to move on to the arm openings. So you're going to lay your bodice out like this, and we're going to finish this using a burrito roll method. So you're going to start over on the left side, and just roll this up really tightly. I want to flip this flutter in. So once you get to this side, you need to bring the lining out from underneath. You're going to wrap it around your fabric. So we're going to be wrapping all this in between the two layers. And you're going to pin that in place so you can sew it together. I just sewed this together, so now I'm going to turn it right side out. And then we're just going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, so I have this turned right side out. You can see how nicely this arm opening is finished now. And now we're going to do the same thing on the other side of our bodice. So this time we'll start by rolling from the right side instead of the left. A nice tight burrito roll. Bring our lining around. Wrap it around, everything sandwiched inside, and then we're going to sew together on the other side. I finished sewing the arm opening on the other side, so now we're ready to sew the side seams. So what you're going to do is bring the bodice up so it meets on the side seams of your outer layer. I've got my watermelons matched up with my watermelons, and then just keep pinning down the side so the lining matches up to the front and back lining on the side seam. And then we're gonna sew this side seam together on both sides of the bodice. The side seams are now sewn. I've turned this right side out and pressed it flat. And now all that's left to do is attach the skirt to both layers of the bodice, and this dress will be finished.